My girlfriend told me during a walk through Central Park. I think I need space to grow without expectations. I agreed instantly, moved forward with plans I had delayed for years, and eventually, she heard my interview on a podcast. I think I need space to grow without expectations. She said it the way someone reads a grocery list out loud. Calm, rehearsed, like she'd been holding that sentence in her mouth for weeks and finally found the right moment to let it go. We were walking through Central Park, mid-October, leaves turning that specific shade of amber that makes everything look prettier than it actually is. She was wearing the navy blue coat I'd bought her for her birthday. I remember noticing that detail. The coat, a gift I chose because she mentioned once, offhandedly, that she'd always wanted one like it. And there she was, wearing it, telling me she needed space. I didn't say anything right away. I kept walking. The gravel crunched under our shoes. A couple with a golden retriever passed us on the left. A kid on a scooter zipped by on the right. The world kept moving, completely indifferent to what had just been said. Did you hear me? Her voice had an edge now. Not anger. More like she expected resistance and was already preparing for it. I heard you, I said. And I stopped walking. I looked at her, really looked at her, the way you look at someone when you're deciding whether to fight or just finally let go. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay. Yeah, I said. Okay. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. I was 31 at the time. She was 29. We'd been together for almost 3 years. We met at a rooftop event in Brooklyn, the kind of gathering where everyone is beautiful and interesting on the surface and hiding something underneath. She was standing near the railing, wine glass in hand, talking to nobody, looking at the skyline like it owed her something. I thought that was fascinating. I walked over. She made me work for the conversation. I like that. For the first 6 months, it was the kind of relationship that makes you feel like you finally understand what all those songs are about. Then, slowly, quietly, without any dramatic moment, it became something else. The walk back from that Central Park conversation was the longest 23 minutes of that entire year. She kept glancing over at me, waiting for the argument, waiting for the questions, waiting for me to ask what space to grow without expectations actually meant, because let's be honest, that phrase doesn't mean a single concrete thing. It means everything and nothing at the same time. But I didn't ask, because somewhere between her saying those words and the sound of gravel under my shoes, something shifted inside me. Not broke, shifted, like a door that had been stuck for a long time finally clicking open. We reached the edge of the park, and she stopped. You're not even going to ask me what I mean? I think I know what you mean, I said. So you're just going to agree? Just like that. It's not just like that, I said. It's 3 years like that. She looked away. The traffic light changed. People crossed around us. I'm not trying to hurt you, she said. I know, I said. And I meant it. She wasn't trying to hurt me. That was almost the more painful part. Here's what she didn't know. Here's what I'd never said out loud, not even to myself properly. For the past 2 years, I had been quietly, consistently, putting my own life on pause. Not dramatically, not consciously even, just small delays, small deferrals, small not yet stacking up one on top of another. There was the job offer in Austin, a tech startup, early stage, the kind of role that doesn't come twice. I turned it down because she was settled in New York, because we'd just signed a lease together, because uprooting felt selfish. She never asked me to stay. She didn't have to. The relationship was the gravitational pull, and I orbited around it without anyone telling me to. There was the podcast project I'd been developing with my college friend, Owen. Owen had been after me for over a year. He ran a mid-sized business and culture podcast called Ground Level, and he wanted me to come on as a regular co-host. I had the background for it. I'd spent 5 years in product strategy, moved into consulting, and built up a perspective on how small businesses were navigating the post-pandemic economy that apparently, according to Owen, was genuinely interesting to people. I kept telling him not yet. I told myself I was too busy. The truth was messier than that. There was something about becoming visible, about putting my voice and opinions out into the world, that felt complicated when your relationship is already complicated. When the person who knows you best is already looking at you like they're not sure what they see. Then there was the thing I hadn't told anyone. The book proposal. 47 pages, sitting in a folder on my laptop, untouched for 8 months. A nonfiction proposal about the psychology of risk aversion in people who were raised to be good, obedient, agreeable, deferential. People like me. I'd pitched it informally to a literary agent named Felix, who I'd met through a mutual contact at a conference. Felix had been enthusiastic. He wanted the full proposal. I kept finding reasons not to send it. The night after the Central Park walk, I sat at my desk for a long time. The apartment was quiet. We were still living together technically, but she'd gone to sleep early in the bedroom, and I was out in the living room, laptop open, cursor blinking. I opened the folder with the book proposal. I read through it. Not to edit, just to remind myself what I'd written. There was a section in the introduction where I'd written about the concept of delayed permission, the idea that certain people spend their lives waiting for external circumstances to give them permission to begin. The right job, the right city, the right relationship stability, the right moment where everything lines up and someone, somehow, signals that now is acceptable. I'd written that paragraph 14 months ago. I hadn't recognized, at the time, that I was writing about myself. I sat there for probably an hour. Then I opened my email. I found Felix's last message from nearly 9 months prior, still cheerful, still asking if I'd made progress. I typed a response. Short, professional. I told him I was ready to send the full proposal. I told him I'd have it to him within 2 weeks. I hit send before I could think about it too long. Then I opened my messages and texted Owen. Still want a co-host? He replied in 4 minutes. I was about to ask someone else next week. Seriously? Yes. I put my phone face down on the desk. I exhaled. It was the first exhale in a long time that felt like it actually reached the bottom of my lungs. The apartment transition took about 3 weeks. There was no screaming, no thrown objects, no dramatic confrontations in the kitchen at 2 in the morning. If anything, that was the strangest part. We divided things civilly, almost awkwardly politely. She took the couch she'd picked out. I kept the dining table I'd brought from my previous place. We were careful with each other the way you're careful with something you know is already broken and you don't want to break further. The last conversation we had as a couple, if you could call it that, happened on a Sunday afternoon when she was packing the last of her things. She paused at the door, a box in her arms, and looked at me. I didn't expect you to just agree, she said. I know, I said. I thought you'd fight for it. I looked at her for a moment. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just with the specific, quiet sadness of someone who has finally understood something that should have been obvious much earlier. I think I stopped fighting a while ago, I said. I just didn't tell you. She didn't respond to that. She adjusted the box in her arms and left. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood in the middle of the apartment and looked at the wall where the couch used to be. There was a rectangle of slightly less faded paint where it had sat for 2 years. November came, and I threw myself into work with a kind of focus I hadn't accessed in years. Not the desperate, distracted kind of focus you use to avoid feeling things. The clean kind. The kind that comes when you've stopped splitting your attention between what you're doing and what someone else might think about what you're doing. I sent the full book proposal to Felix on November 14th. 52 pages. I'd added an entire new section in those 2 weeks. A section about how people confuse comfort with love and end up hollowing out their own ambitions to preserve a feeling that was already fading. Felix called me 2 days after I sent it. This is very good, he said. Not effusively. Felix wasn't the effusive type. Very good, from Felix was the equivalent of someone else jumping on a table. I want to start shopping it in January, he said. That gives us time to tighten the last chapter and put together your platform materials. Platform materials, which meant visibility, which meant podcast appearances, essays, speaking engagements. The kind of public presence that a publisher wants to see before they commit. I called Owen that same evening. We need to move faster, I said. How fast? I want to be a full co-host by January. Owen laughed. Not mocking, just surprised. What happened to you? He said. I got some time back, I said. Recording with Owen for the first time was both easier and harder than I'd expected. Easier because we'd been friends for 15 years and the conversation came naturally. Harder because being genuinely honest, on mic, about real ideas makes you aware of how often you usually soften things. The show's format was loose but structured. We'd open with a topic, something happening in the small business world, or a broader cultural shift touching how people work and build, and then we'd go deep on it without a script. I found my voice faster than I expected. Not a performance voice. My actual voice. The one I used when I was explaining something I actually cared about. Owen noticed it after our 3rd recording session. You're different than I thought you'd be on mic, he said, pulling off his headphones. Good different or bad different? Good different, he said. You don't hedge as much as you do in person. I thought about that on the subway ride home. He was right. In real life, I hedged constantly. In conversation, in decisions, in relationships. I'd built an entire architecture of hedging around myself without realizing it. But in front of the mic, with no one to manage, with no relational dynamics to navigate, I just said what I thought. It felt unfamiliar. It felt like stepping into a room that had been mine all along, and I'd just never walked in. By March, we had a rhythm. Owen and I released episodes every Tuesday. The show had grown. Not virally, not overnight, but consistently. Our listener numbers had doubled from when I joined. The emails were starting to come in. People responding to specific things I'd said. Not fan mail. More like recognition. Messages from people saying, "I've never heard someone say that out loud," or "That part about delayed permission made me pull my car over." That last one came from a listener in Portland. She said she'd been sitting with an unfiled business license for 2 years. She filed it the same day she listened to the episode. I read that email 3 times. Then I screenshot it and put it in a folder I labeled Actual Proof. April brought the first real external attention. A larger podcast in the business and self-development space, called The Architecture of Choice, reached out to Owen asking if I'd be a guest. The host was a man named Callum, well-regarded, sharp, the kind of interviewer who does his research and isn't afraid to push. The show had a substantial audience, a different tier from where Owen and I were operating. Owen forwarded me the email with 0 message body. Just the email, forwarded. I understood. This was the moment he believed would come. I wrote back and said yes. The recording with Callum happened on a Thursday afternoon. It was remote. I sat in the corner of my apartment that I'd quietly turned into a recording setup, good microphone, treated walls, decent lighting even though it was audio only. Callum opened the way all good interviewers open. Not with the topic. With the person. "Tell me what kind of kid you were," he said. "Before the career stuff." I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because the honest answer required me to say something I hadn't said publicly before. The kind of kid who was very good at understanding what was wanted from him and becoming that, I said. And who spent a long time thinking that was a skill instead of a problem. Callum was quiet for a beat. "That's the most interesting first answer I've gotten in a while," he said. And we were off. We talked for 2 hours and 12 minutes. The episode that aired was trimmed to 93 minutes. We covered the book proposal. Felix had sold it to a publisher by then, a mid-size house with a strong nonfiction track record. We covered the consulting work. We covered the concept of delayed permission in depth. And then, near the end, Callum asked something I hadn't prepared for. "You talk about people waiting for external circumstances to give them permission to begin," he said. "What was the moment that you stopped waiting?" I didn't answer immediately. I thought about Central Park in October. I thought about navy blue wool and amber leaves and gravel under shoes. I thought about a door clicking shut and a faded rectangle on a wall. "Someone gave me space," I said carefully. "And instead of trying to collapse that space, I stepped into it." "Can you say more about that?" "Not in a way that's fair to the person involved," I said. "But I will say this. Sometimes the thing that looks like losing is actually just the starting line. The problem is you have to not be running back toward what you lost long enough to realize you've started moving." Callum let that breathe. "Good interviewers know when not to talk." "That might be the line I put in the trailer," he said. The episode went live on a Sunday in late April. By Wednesday, Owen was texting me every few hours with updates. The Architecture of Choice audience was larger and more engaged than either of us had fully accounted for. The episode was being shared, not just listened to. Shared, clipped, discussed. A 20-second clip of the starting line comment was circulating on LinkedIn. Felix called me on Thursday morning. "Your publisher is very happy," he said. Again, from Felix, this was the equivalent of fireworks. "The pre-order page isn't even live yet," I said. "It will be," he said. "Let's talk next week about moving the timeline." I found out she heard it the way I found out most things in that era of my life. Indirectly, and then all at once. Our mutual friend, a woman named Tess who had somehow remained friends with both of us without ever making it weird, sent me a message on a Friday afternoon. "Hey, are you okay? I feel like I should check in." I looked at that message for a moment. "I'm good," I typed back. "What's up?" "Nothing. Just, I think Nadia listened to your episode." I set my phone down. I picked it up again. "Okay," I typed. "She called me." Tess wrote. "She had questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind you ask when you recognize yourself in something and you're not sure how to feel about it." I didn't respond right away. I made coffee. I stood at my kitchen window and watched a cab try to parallel park badly for a solid minute and a half. Then I picked up my phone. Is she okay? I typed. She's not okay, Tess wrote. You know how she is. I didn't know how she was. That was part of the problem, actually. I knew exactly how she was, and I'd spent 3 years adjusting myself around it so smoothly that by the end, I wasn't sure which parts of me were real and which parts were accommodation. Tell her I'm fine, I wrote to Tess. She doesn't need to worry. I don't think it's worry, Tess wrote back. I think it's something else. Nadia reached out directly about 2 weeks later. A text, not a call. A text. Hey, I heard your podcast. I've been trying to figure out what to say. I think I'd like to talk if you're open to it. I read it probably 4 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I was deciding whether the version of me who would have responded 2 years ago, immediately, warmly, dropping everything, was the same version sitting with his phone right now. He wasn't. I'm around, I wrote back. What did you want to talk about? She called about an hour later. I was in the middle of editing notes for the book's 3rd chapter, and I answered anyway. Hi, she said. Her voice was the same. Some part of my chest registered that fact automatically, involuntarily. Hi, I said. Silence for a beat. I listened to the whole episode, she said. I figured. The part about delayed permission, she said. I've been thinking about it since. What about it? She paused. Was that about us? I looked at my notes on the screen. The words I'd written about people who hollow themselves out to preserve a feeling. It was about me, I said. It's always been about me. I was the one doing the delaying. But something changed that. Yes. The walk, she said. Not a question. The walk, I confirmed. Another silence. This one different from the first. Longer. More weight in it. I didn't expect you to agree, she said. You've mentioned that. I know. She exhaled. I thought you'd push back. I thought we'd have the conversation, and you'd make your case, and I'd realize I was overthinking it, and things would just go back. I let that sit in the air for a moment. And if they had? I said. She didn't answer right away. I don't know, she said finally. I think I wanted you to want to fight for it. I know, I said. Did you not want to? I closed my laptop. I leaned back in my chair. Outside my window, the city was doing its evening thing. The light shifting, the noise changing register, the particular quality of a New York dusk that is both beautiful and exhausting. I wanted to, I said. For a while. But wanting to fight for something, and that fight having a purpose are different things. I think I'd been fighting for so long, quietly, just trying to keep things stable, that when you finally said it out loud, I realized I was tired. Not of you. Of the fight I'd been having alone. She was quiet. I didn't know you felt that way, she said. I know, I said. I didn't say it. That's on me. But also. I stopped. Also what? Also some part of you knew, I said. Not consciously. But you knew. That's why you asked for space instead of asking for a conversation. Because a conversation would have required both of us to be honest, and I think we'd both gotten comfortable avoiding that. The silence this time was longer than any of the others. That's probably fair, she said. Her voice was quieter now. Not defeated. Just honest. Maybe more honest than she'd been with me in over a year. The episode was good, she said after a moment. Your voice on the podcast, you sounded like yourself. Like the version of you from early on. I think I am more like that version now, I said. I'm glad, she said. And I believed her. I genuinely believed she meant it. That was the thing about Nadia. She wasn't a villain in this story. She'd never been a villain. She was someone who had gotten comfortable, who had maybe used the relationship as a kind of container for her own unresolved things, who had used my steadiness to avoid her own movement. But she wasn't malicious. She was just human, imprecise, the way most of us are. She asked if we could meet for coffee. It suited her. The autonomy suited her. I noticed that without saying it. About my Austin arrangement, which she found interesting and characteristically unpredictable of me, which made me smile because she wasn't wrong. About Tess, who was apparently going through something with her own relationship, which felt like the universe being slightly wry. After about an hour, she set down her cup. She looked at me directly, the way she used to in the early days, before the looking had gotten careful. Can I ask you something honestly? Yeah, I said. When you agreed, on the walk, were you relieved? I didn't answer immediately, not because I was deciding whether to be honest, but because the honest answer had more texture than a simple yes. Not in the moment, I said. In the moment it just felt like clarity, like something I'd been not quite seeing had come into focus. The relief came later. At my desk that night, When I opened the book proposal and realized I'd been keeping it in a folder for 8 months like it was contraband. She absorbed that. And was I the reason you were keeping it there? No, I said. And also yes. Not because you told me to. Because I built a version of myself that I thought fit the life we were living, and that version didn't have room for the book or the podcast or the Austin idea. And I chose that. I want to be clear about that. I chose it. You didn't ask me to. But you resented it, she said. I don't think I resented you, I said carefully. I think I resented the version of myself I constructed. And I think that resentment was looking for a place to live, and relationships are very good at housing it without anyone realizing. She was quiet, looking at her coffee cup. Then, I should have asked you more questions. So should I said. Do you think we could have? I don't think could have is the right question anymore, I said. Gently, not cutting her off harshly, just redirecting. Why not? Because who we are now couldn't have gotten here without the walk. And I think who I am now is someone I actually want to be. I don't want to run the alternate scenario and risk losing him. She looked up at me. There was something in her eyes that I didn't want to name because naming it would have made the next 5 minutes harder than they needed to be. You sound different, she said. I know. Not worse. I know. It's strange, she said. Listening to you on that podcast, and then again right now. It's like watching someone finally stand up straight who's been hunching for years. And being glad for them, and also realizing that the hunching was partly why they fit so well next to you. That sentence landed on me quietly, and I let it. Because it was honest. Because it was probably the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. And because it was the kind of sentence that closes something. Not violently. Not with a door slam. More like a tide going out. Gradual, and total, and inevitable. We hugged outside the cafe. She held on for a beat longer than a casual goodbye. I let her. Then she stepped back, adjusted the strap of her bag, said something about hoping the book tour went well whenever it happened. I told her I'd send her a copy when it came out. She said she'd like that. Then she turned and walked west on the block, and I stood there for a moment, watching her go, and felt something that was not grief and not relief, but some precise compound of the two that doesn't have a name in English. Then I turned east and walked. The book came out the following February, 14 months after that October walk. It did well. Better than well, if I'm being accurate. The first 3 weeks of sales exceeded the publisher's projections by enough that Felix started using the phrase second book with a specificity that had previously been purely theoretical. The ideas in it, delayed permission, self-constructed limitation, the psychology of people who are very good at becoming what's needed of them, resonated in a way I hadn't fully anticipated. Not because they were particularly original ideas, but because a lot of people recognized themselves in them. That kept surprising me. Not the recognition from strangers, exactly, but the relief in it. The way people would find me after talks or write long emails explaining how they'd been carrying something similar but had never heard it articulated in a way they could work with. I'd written the book partly as a way of understanding myself. That it turned out to be useful to other people felt like a bonus that I still haven't quite fully metabolized. Owen and I recorded our 100th episode in March. We did something slightly different for it. We each brought one thing we'd gotten wrong in the first 100 episodes. Not a correction. A genuine intellectual or personal error we'd made on mic and wanted to revisit. Mine was from an early episode, before I'd fully found my footing, where I'd said something to the effect that people who delay their ambitions are ultimately choosing fear over possibility. I'd said it like it was simple, like fear was the only variable. I think that's reductive, I said into the mic, all these months later. What would you say now? Owen asked. I'd say some people delay because they're afraid, I said. And some people delay because they love something or someone enough to keep arranging their life around it. And those aren't the same thing, even if the outcome looks similar from the outside. Owen nodded. And which were you? I thought about it. Both, at different points, I said. And for a while, I used the second reason to avoid being honest about the first. Owen pointed at me the way he does when something's going in the episode. I laughed. The mic caught it. I got a message from Nadia about a week after the book came out. Brief. I read it. The section on constructed selves. I sat with it for a long time. I think you got it right. Congratulations. I wrote back. Thank you. Really. She sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. That was enough. I think we both understood that the conversation had reached its natural boundary, and pushing past it would only be for the sake of pushing past it, not because either of us had anything left that needed to be said. There's a kind of completion in that. Not happy ending completion. Real completion. The kind that doesn't require a bow. I've thought, many times, about what would have happened if I'd done what she expected on that walk. If I'd argued. If I'd asked what space to grow without expectations meant, parsed it, negotiated it, found a way to reframe it as something workable. I probably could have. I was very good at that. 3 years of practice. Maybe we'd have stayed together another 6 months. Maybe another year. Maybe I'd still be keeping the book proposal in a folder labeled someday. Maybe Owen would have found another co-host. Maybe I'd be a slightly different shape, a little more compressed, a little less legible to myself. And I wouldn't even notice because compression can happen so gradually that you just think it's your actual shape. I don't think about it with bitterness. I don't think about it with triumph either. I think about it the way you think about a road you didn't take, with genuine acknowledgement that something real was on it. There was love in that relationship. Genuine, specific love. The kind that is not made up and not nothing. It just wasn't the kind that had room for both of us to become what we were actually trying to become. And I think, on some level, on that October afternoon in Central Park, she understood that before I did. Asking for space was her honest thing. Agreeing was mine. There's a thing that happens when you build something real after a long period of building nothing. A specific quality to the work. Not effortless. It's still work. It's still hard. It still has days where nothing flows and everything feels like pulling wire through concrete. But there's a thread under it. A through line that connects what you're doing to what you actually are. And when that thread is present, even the hard days have a different texture. You know you're in the right place. Not because it's comfortable, because it's honest. That's the difference, I think, between a life you've constructed to manage other people's perceptions of you and a life you've built because you actually had something to say. One of them is very good at looking a certain way. The other one is harder to see from the outside, but easier to live inside. I spent a long time building the first kind. I don't regret all of it. Some of it taught me things I needed to know, but I don't miss it. Not even a little. Not even on the hard days. Callum had me back on The Architecture of Choice for a second episode in the spring, time to the book launch. This time it was longer, more personal. He'd read the book carefully, the kind of carefully that you can hear in the questions. Near the end, he circled back to something from the first interview. You said, last time, that sometimes what looks like losing is actually just the starting line, he said. Do you still believe that? I thought about it. Not performing thought. Actually thinking. I believe it more now than when I said it. I said. Because I said it when I was at the beginning. And now I can see back down the path far enough to know that the ground I'm standing on is actually real. It's not hope. It's what happened. What's the hardest part of that to accept? I didn't expect that question, but I answered it. That it required the loss to be real, I said. You can't manufacture the starting line. You can't fake the thing that shifts you. It has to actually cost you something, or your body doesn't believe the change is permanent. The studio was quiet. I could hear the sound of the city, faint, through the walls. And yours cost you something, Callum said. Yes, I said. Worth it. I smiled. Not the kind of smile for cameras, because there were no cameras. The actual kind. Worth it, I said. There are still moments, occasionally, in the small hours of a night that's been too long or a day that's hit too many nerves, where I think about the coat, the navy blue coat, the birthday gift, the amber leaves, and I feel something. Not regret. Not longing, exactly. More like an acknowledgement. She was real. We were real. What I let myself become in that relationship was not fully real, and that's the part that had to end. But the her of it, the specific, irreplaceable human her of it, was real. I hope she got what she was looking for. The space. The growth without expectations. I genuinely mean that. Because the version of me who came out the other side of Central Park that October afternoon is a person who can mean that without it being complicated. And that, maybe more than the book or the podcast or any of the other things that followed, is the part I'm most glad to have. The uncomplicated ability to wish someone well. After everything. Without it costing me anything. Without needing anything back. Just clean. Just honest. Just free.